Okay, so my name is Charlie Dark. I am a DJ, yoga teacher, creative consultant, and nowadays I'm known for being the founder of an urban run collective known as the Run Dem Crew. I'm a b-boy, and I've been listening to hip hop. Well, whenever Rappers Delight came out, that's when it grabbed my attention, so I've been kind of listening to it since then. So I consider myself a b-boy for life. Born and raised in London, and I am 53 years old. Or 53 years young, should I say. I think they call it nylon. No, the NY London connection has always been strong. It's always been one of those places that kind of, you leave London and then you gravitate towards going to New York as your first stop. Flights to New York were cheap, so I think that helped the cultural exchange as well. One of the reasons why hip hop landed in London first is because hip hop hit the capital cities around the world first. And so we're a capital city. And then also you got the language. You know, there wasn't that kind of language barrier that you had in Europe. Immediately it was kind of like, I understand what you're talking about. I understand the cultural references. This is like the second place where you need to kind of set up shop. Because what I think happened with hip hop is it was one of the first forms of music that arrived where you could look at it and be like, those people who were making it look like me. They think like me. They've come from the same social circumstances as me. You're rapping in the projects. We've got estates. You know, you've got a kind of like a violent street culture. So do we. You're talking in your records about wanting something more. We're going through high unemployment, minor strikes, wars, you know, this idea of basically being suppressed by a government that's maybe not listening to us. We identify the message with the message that you're talking about in your records. So I just think culturally and the timings were just perfect for people to be like, everything that you're talking about, here's a mirror. We can identify with that too. If we can join forces together, we could take over the world. One of the things that was really exciting about living in London during the early 80s is that the government at the time, for some strange reason, really started facilitating the idea of hip-hop concerts and cultural exchanges and bringing people from this kind of faraway place to kind of share their culture with young teenagers from the UK. It was just a really exciting time because at that point, you would see someone, you would look at their feet, and you would immediately know whether they were into the culture or not. And it was almost like a uniform that people had. It was like, that was like a universal passport for connection. So we were talking about community before community was even a term. And that again is really important when you kind of spend time with people who are very, very different from you. But suddenly because of the music you're listening to, you realize you're a lot closer in your minds and the way that you think than you thought.
And the Patta community, I think it's like a new way of thinking, a new way of life, a new way of how we see each other and helping, and not only taking, but also give back, so that the next generation has like new tools. So the bar used to be like this, with all the gatekeeping, you have to find out yourself. Now we are here, and then in 40 years, we probably be here with all the assets and tools and the generations that we have. I want to have the next generation be better than us. So we spreading that message with, Patta got love for all, but also with all our assets that we have through the sound system, running team, Patta Foundation with the Patta Academy, with the stores that we open, but also with our collabos that we do. Everything has to be, has a meaning. But the main thing is that we are creating something and leaving a legacy for the next generation that they can be better than us, basically.
Nous, au Paperboy, voilà, déjà on est un endroit où les kids aiment bien se retrouver. Ils y bossent pour faire des extras, pendant les vacances scolaires, ils apprennent. Et tous les gars qui sont ici, ils ont un talent, tu vois. Comme je te disais, sur tous les événements qu'on a, on a toujours besoin de créa dans tous les sens. Donc on se sert aussi de cette communauté qui vient manger au Paperboy pour enclencher des choses ensemble. Parfois, on sert d'incubateur. Donc voilà, c'est du win-win. Moi, j'aime bien la fraîcheur des jeunes qu'il y a ici. Et je peux peut-être aussi leur apporter un support pour qu'ils soient un petit peu en lumière, tu vois.
We came together and made a Tumblr first called Places+Faces. And like the whole concept of that was like place, New York, face, ASAP Ferg. Through that, we started to brainstorm and think of other ideas, like magazines that we have our own magazines, even to like album artwork, branding wise, which was like the merchandise. We kept that going and we started bringing more elements to it, like parties, pop-ups. That also became an element of our brand, which we've kept over the past decade, from the blog era to where we are now. The importance of Polaroid to us is the originality, the rarity factor of like, no one else has this physical picture like you've taken. Kind of like, it's more, to me, like it's rare on the level of like the Mona Lisa or the Pokemon Charizard sort of thing. It's more valuable to us than a digital picture or a picture you take on your smartphone. It's more tangible, it's more classic, it's more unique. The bigger picture for Places+Faces is to inspire, especially youth culture, to like express themselves creatively, however they feel set. Whether it's like DJing, photography, documenting culture, or making their own kind of clothes.
I think currently in London, there are these kind of creative breeding grounds kind of popping up all over the city. My generation and maybe younger are kind of trying to take that into their own hands and kind of create these spaces where people can kind of come together and build a community of like-minded people with something to work towards that's bigger than themselves, you know? So places like Bankrupt on Brick Lane is a great one where you'll meet the newest kind of rapper coming in, your DJs, painters, all sorts really, and it's a store that doesn't just sell clothes, it's kind of trying to sell you the whole hip-hop lifestyle, whether it's like the music you listen to or the books you read, you know? And then I think more on the music side, like Victory Lap Radio and what we're doing it's trying to create those kind of breeding grounds where new artists can come and find producers to work with, DJs to work with, and for the scene to just grow and get bigger. It's always been about you and yours and using people around you, and that's something that's like hugely influential to myself and how we do stuff at Victory Lab Radio.
If I go, let's say, back, as in how I got introduced to hip-hop, it was through my cousin. She had these mixtapes. She let me hear it, and I would describe that feeling as something I recognize, but futuristic at the same time. And now I know, of course, it's the samples and the originals of the records my parents played at home to something I never heard before in the now. So it was really a mind-boggling thing.
Yeah, I remember watching MTV Bass and Kiss on the TV with the likes of like Eminem, Ludacris, 50 Cent, Kanye. And then I became like a huge Eminem and 50 fan. And then I got my dad to, well, illegally download Eminem's music onto like a CD player. And then I'd be listening to Eminem and 50 Cent. This is when I was like 10 years old, just doing like push-ups. I don't think I got many push-ups in, but like I was definitely listening to the music.
Ouais, du coup, moi, mon premier vrai grand souvenir, ma première claque hip-hop, je l'ai vécu vers mes 15 ans à Paris quand j'ai vu Primo en live. J'ai trouvé ça fort. J'écoutais donc du coup Gangstar sur des CD. Moi, j'étais plus petit. Et là, tout de suite, on n'était pas dans cette ère Instagram où tout était facile tout de suite. Je l'ai vu face à moi et vraiment, c'était fort.
Il y a un moment aussi assez clé où, très jeune, je vois ce DVD Up in Smoke Tour, qui était le tour de Dr. Dre en 2001, il me semble. Donc à ce moment, je dois avoir 6 ans, 7 ans. Et c'est la première fois que je vois à quoi peut ressembler un concert de rap avec des grosses têtes d'affiches. T'as Eminem, t'as Snoop Dogg, Exhibit. Et ça m'a vachement influencé en fait dans le côté liberté qu'il y a dans les hip-hop.
My first experience with hip-hop culture really takes me back to when I was a kid. Car rides with my brother, he would just have this subwoofer in the back and blast Tupac, top volume. Driving around the neighborhood is like core memories for me and just fills me with like so much warmth.
I remember being like 8 or 7. I might have heard hip hop earlier, not put a name to it, but my first moment realizing this was hip hop was the music video for Public Enemy's Fight the Power. Biblically remember that because it was like a lot of energy, it was like flamboyant, you had Flavor Flav just goofing about next to Chuck D spitting like lyrical, conscious bars. I was like, whoa, what is this? And I was with my sister, and like obviously she's older than me, so she really know what was up. And she was like, that's hip hop. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, that's my first ever memory.
More first-hand experience was my dad owned a art gallery in Birmingham growing up, and he used to put on exhibitions for a whole range of artists, including local graffiti artists and people from the culture. And there was this one guy, Temper, I remember having a big exhibition at my dad's gallery, and it had like kind of vinyl DJs and live graffiti and breakdancing and all sorts. So it was like a really good snapshot of culture that at the time was like something completely new and alien to me when I was like 8 years old.
There was this new thing that was popping and it was going, and you'd be like, oh, what is this? And then especially with the music, I mean, remember like Abudini, Fat Boys, of course LL Early's, Tila Rock, everything just came to you and you would like memorize those lyrics and the beats and everything. And then with the records was also like a book. you would look at the record and just study the record. That was your internet, that was your info, that was everything that's on there. What has a guy on? What does FPM means? And then you find out first priority music. Then you turn around, then you see like all the special thanks is, oh, WBLS, what's that, a radio? Everything was just being curious about how do I get this? And I think it's also very important with hip hop. It's a very curious way of view for like how I can define myself as being, oh, I'm gonna be creative to find out what's going on with this new phenomenon.
People started kind of coming together, pooling equipment, and learning how to make the music, and then being brave enough to share that music with other people. Derek B, really important artist, because he was like one of the first people that had was a hip hop artist from the UK that was signed to a major label, and he put out a couple of records. You had people like Mud Family, Skinny Man, where it was kind of like, people have kind of got to the point where they were like, I don't want to rap in an American accent. I don't want to rap about the things that Americans are talking about. I want to rap about what's happening in the UK. That was really powerful to hear, kind of like people rapping, using UK slang that was very particular, not even UK slang, but London slang particular to certain areas. Really empowering. There were a load of people making records, and London Posse, I cannot talk about records, and London Posse was kind of like, yo, these guys are not only speaking in English accents, but they got that Jamaican slang down really hard as well. And, they're really repping London. For a while, it was a bit kind of like, oh, you're from America. You're from New York. Oh. And then eventually people were like, yeah, you're from New York, but I'm from London. What?
It was very apparent, like kind of like stylistically and style-wise. So I think in the fashion, and like I said, in my dad's gallery with the graffiti artists and stuff, it was like breakdancing, vinyl DJs, and then all the upcoming guys in the city were wearing like Sidewoods New Eras, and it was very like American hip-hop influenced, but the actual music styles and stuff that was still coming out of the city was still very true to being British. So there was a lot of grime, and especially in Birmingham, it was a lot of like stuff like bassline and jungle, and a lot of this kind of like like British kind of dance bass heavy music that was it was getting styled up with like kind of this American hip hop feel, but the music wasn't kind of quite there yet. And then I think nowadays it's kind of, people have kind of found their feet in the city and are kind of making influenced stuff, but it's British rap,
Étant élevé par une des premières générations du hip-hop parisien, par mes parents, j'ai grandi avec ces gens en fait, et avec ces valeurs et cette culture. Donc j'ai dû apprendre toutes les références en fait. C'était naturel pour moi de faire partie de ce mouvement-là, et après je l'ai vécu à ma façon. Et disons que j'ai été élevé dans une culture underground qui est maintenant la culture dominante. Donc j'ai pu voir quand même les changements entre-temps. Aujourd'hui, on parle beaucoup de rap, moins de hip-hop. Alors que le hip-hop, c'est quand même plusieurs disciplines. On parle de la danse, du graffiti, du DJing et du beatbox et du rap, bien sûr. Mais le rap a pris tellement le dessus qu'on parle plus de rap que de hip-hop aujourd'hui.
To me, it's an attitude. It's a feeling. It's an approach. It's a strategy. It's again, for me, you live and breathe it. It's a knowledge you carry within.
To roughly quote KRS-One, the teacher, he broke it down into an easy way, like hip represents being in the know, staying relevant, consciousness, like that's where the intelligence comes from. And hop represents a movement, whether you're like dancing or produce or DJing, you're doing something, you're not staying stagnant, it's a movement. So together hip hop is an intelligent movement. So just like that, Places+Faces, we also move as an intelligent movement with hip-hop as a culture and community.
It's 2 turntables and a mixer. Why? Because what hip-hop does is like creating something out of nothing. And when hip-hop started, it was like, oh, oppression and etc. And we had no instruments and etc. The only instrument was the turntables. And you take all kinds of music, you put it through a mixer, and you get something else. That something else, that's hip-hop. The famous line of Grandmaster Cass is hip-hop didn't invent anything but reinvented everything. And that's what it is. It's like the biggest culture up to date now.
Le hip-hop au Paperboy, c'est We Funk Radio. On met ça le matin, on l'éteint quand on part le soir, donc il y a toujours un fond de hip-hop ici. On a tous été influencés par les mêmes codes au Paperboy. C'est pour ça qu'on s'entend bien, qu'on se comprend bien. Et après, voilà, il y a un petit quelque chose dans l'air, je ne sais quoi, qui est palpable. Mais voilà, je saurais pas l'expliquer, quoi.
Hip-hop served as the blueprint, you know? Everything that I've been influenced by somehow, some way feeds into my music. And I feel as though growing up in a city like London, there's so many influences about, man. Like, I remember when I started going like to raves and I started discovering jungle music and drum and bass and garage and all of these things. It's like, that's like a whole different range of music, you know, different BPM, different tempo, different drum patterns. Everything is like, you know, usable in a sense. Like you can take a drum and bass or like a garage drum pattern and put it over something that's so melodic and so juxtaposed to create like I guess in a way creating a new genre, I suppose. But yeah, everything just feeds in, and it's not even like intentionally, it's just naturally what I have grown up around and the things that I find myself gravitating towards. I think why hip-hop culture is so influential is because things that it derives from are like quite fresh and new, and it's like a perspective that I feel like a mass audience is unable to grasp, but through the music they can kind of gain some kind of understanding of the culture, you know, because hip-hop comes from impoverished environments, you know. It hasn't come from a place that has any form of like nepotism or any form of wealth. It's like the people that created the genre, they really had to grind in order to establish themselves. And even when it was coming up, it was difficult for people to respect it because the majority of the artists that were coming up through hip-hop are all black, you know?
I think hip-hop culture shaped me in so many ways. I think it started very much from my hair journey, because when I was younger, I was kind of imitating this white narrative, you know, straightening my hair, and so very specific. I think for so many black women, that's the journey to kind of embrace your natural curls and embrace your culture and embrace who you are. At that age, there was way more representation in hip-hop as well. So I would see more people like me, and I would kind of realize like, oh, okay, I can be this version of myself, and that's fine. I can live my truth. So as a photographer and director, I kind of find my inspiration in the everyday, very unpolished images of these very intimate and vulnerable moments. I'm also trying to get more representation through my images. So all the images I take is just kind of honoring whatever subject I have.
kind of work organically most of the time. Often you can see it through this social, political lens that it always relates to people and their struggle. The main thing is kind of collaging with screen printed work. I would say like a DJ, I look for samples, so I dig for the good stuff, image-wise, and then I create this new narrative. So it's very much like hip-hop, actually, recontextualizing things you find in the world, telling a new story. That's why I believe that people from the hip-hop community are the best curators. And it comes quite easy for us to combine things or to compose things together and have a wide range of references in shape, in color, in material, in visual, in everything, because it, as I previously said, it's holistic, you know. So we saw the whole package, and it was fashion, it was attitude, it was graphic design, it was graffiti, breakdance, it's art in itself, it's an art form.
J'agis un peu comme un observateur, dans le sens où j'ai toujours un carnet sur moi qui me permet de retranscrire la réalité que je vois, mais d'y ajouter quelque chose. C'est-à-dire, je suis vachement inspiré surtout par les gens, leur attitude, leur mouvement dans l'espace. La façon dont le hip-hop, ça me touche, de par ses valeurs et sa forme, c'est le moyen large d'expression, en fait, le panel de couleurs qu'on peut utiliser à travers le hip-hop. Et moi, en tant qu'illustrateur, dessinateur, c'est une énergie qui, je pense, m'influence en fait dans la manière dont je travaille, parce que moi aussi, j'aspire à toucher plusieurs formes en fait de mes possibilités, de mes capacités en fait, tout simplement. Et je trouve que le hip-hop, ça a vraiment ce pouvoir.
So hip-hop kind of influenced me and shines through in my creative work in numerous ways, really. And I think as well as hip-hop, it's a lot of kind of DIY kind of ethos, whether it's like from punk rock music to hip-hop or kind of like rave music and stuff like that. I think anything that kind of gives a voice to the voiceless and kind of has been influential in my creative work. So one form in particular as well that's more specific to something like graphic design. I do all the graphic design work for Victory Lap and flyers and posters for everything that's involved. And I do a lot of essentially what is like visual sampling, which is a huge thing in hip-hop, where it's kind of taking something that isn't meant for you and reappropriating it and flipping it for a new audience. So that's been apparent in hip-hop for years musically, and that's something that I try to replicate visually, whether it's like Japanese cartoons or punk rock flyers, you know?
I think that hip-hop influenced creative culture in London in a number of ways. One being the idea of there is no I in team. You want to get things done, you have to form a collective. You got to make what you're doing seem bigger than it actually is. This is the reason why you're rolling with a big group of people. There's no way you can say we can't come into the building if I've rolled up with a posse of 30 people. I'm coming in. There's no way I can't get it done if I'm pooling the resources of a group of people. What we realize from hip hop is if we bring the attitude of punk in with the attitude of hip hop, with the attitude of rebellion and protest, we can shift the needle and we can make new opportunities happen. Hip hop taught us that basically you don't need to wait for permission. In fact, once you wait for permission, that's when it's a bit old, it's a bit stale. So we will do it first and ask for permission later. Hip hop really, I think, solidified this idea of DIY culture and getting things done.
It's up to us, you know? It's up to us. Like, what do we shine light on? You know, who are the gatekeepers? What are you gatekeeping? You know, and having a vision, I think, is super important for not only yourself as an individual, but also as a family or as a friend group.
I could potentially see stuff coming back around. History tends to repeat itself quite a lot, and I wouldn't be surprised if in 10 years we're back dressing like Dipset and the early 2000s is back and people are rebelling that way, because at the moment it's like a big 808s and a big electronic music kind of influence. With that said as well, kids growing up with access to kind of all technology and everything at their fingertips is like super liberating now, but maybe in 10 years kids are wanting to return back to human touch and analog and kind of return back to these kind of what will be seen as like archaic kind of methods.
Au sens large, après, créativement, c'est-à-dire, quand je dis large, c'est au-delà de Paris, c'est une certaine retour au sens, en fait, de pourquoi on fait les choses. Je pense que ça restera toujours plus dans le temps, en fait, une œuvre qui a de la substance. Ça va peut-être fédérer moins de monde, mais ça va rester plus longtemps.
It's become more mainstream in a sense, which in a way I'm very happy about, because then people will respect it a bit more and stop alienating it as much. But at the same time, I really hope that all the new kids will kind of respect like who were before them and kind of respect what the culture is really about.
My cousin always describes it as a renaissance. He's like, London is in the middle of like a creative renaissance. And I see it, like there's like a huge change in the faces that you see in more prominent positions and more prominent spaces. I'm seeing people really be paid because of the things and the jobs that hip-hop is creating. And it's only 50 years from now, you know, so imagine what the next 50 years look like.
Dans les 10 prochaines années, pour moi, le hip-hop, ça va être le nouveau rock. C'est-à-dire que c'était encore niche il y a 10 ans. Aujourd'hui, c'est beaucoup moins niche. Et dans 10 ans, il y aura des grands-parents qui auront des vinyles de hip-hop dans leur bibliothèque.
Where I see hip-hop culture the next decade being more experimental, more fearless artists. It will emerge through some nuance. I can't fully pinpoint it, but I see elements of like more subgenres, more like different thought-provoking experiences.
I think is going to be really, really exciting, because every 10 years, there's a cultural shift. Every 10 years, in my time in hip hop, what's happened is there's a kid in the bedroom somewhere who turns on the radio and doesn't hear what they want to hear, turns on their TV and doesn't see what they want to see, and is brave enough to start doing something that culturally shifts the culture again.
Done the thing. Shit.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
Pastèque-asse. Vas-y. Désolé mon frère, hein. Sorry bro.
Thank you very much. Take it easy.
Regardless of, everyone thinks you gotta rap. Now I don't believe that. You ain't gonna always. Not everyone has to rap, because I can't really rap like that. That's just,
never a skill. We can try if you want.
Nah.